coming on to your talk. So the talk centered all around the language of mental health. And I thought that was a very, because you said something in the talk which I agree with, which is a lot of people nowadays, mental health awareness, you know, it kind of starts to lose, like, yes, that's maybe the right term to use to attract the widest audience, but when it's being so overused, it kind of starts to lose its value as well. So that's why when you started talking about the language, I thought that's very interesting. So why don't you tell all of us, why is it so important to start having like a language like mental health? Because like you said, it's like learning French or Spanish. It's an actual, there are steps, there are techniques, an actual language that we can all learn to start helping, you know, other people in addressing this issue.
Yeah, I think so. The idea is a bit interdisciplinary. It kind of brings together psychology, but also linguistics, and tries to marry the two together. But I think that when we learn a foreign language, you know, whatever that may be, for me, I was learning French in school. They put you through lessons where you have to learn about syntax and you have to learn about grammar and the right way to conjugate verbs. And this is true for any language. All languages are the same. But it's not always the case with mental health, but I think it could be. So when we learn about mental health, we speak of mental health literacy, which is the knowledge that we have about our mental health, you know, how stress might work, how anxiety might work, you know, how you can provide yourself with this self-help. But we don't really have a strategy, I think, when it comes to public health in terms of starting the conversation around mental health and also starting the, you know, what it is that we should learn. So I think that's why we always hear the term mental health awareness thrown about all the time. And it's been thrown about for a long time. And now is when I think we need to take a step up and move on from mental health awareness into mental health action and provide a proper plan to help us learn about not only our own mental health, but the mental health of others and how we can support them. So the idea of the language of mental health is exactly this. What are the grammar and the syntax to say, you know, what are the rules to learning about mental health and to our own mental health that we can talk about? So I talk about a few things, but one example, for example, is how we use like stigmatization in the way in which we say things to people. Oftentimes we use descriptors which attach these stigmas casually. I know I had done so before I learned about this, and you don't really realize the impact of what it might mean to someone when you say it. So a classic example is to say, you know, self-harmers, to imagine that there is this category of people who self-harm. And when you say that, you're kind of implying that it's within their identity. You know, you are a self-harmer or you are a schizophrenic. And that's that. It seems as if there's no area for growth. But if you have a mental health disorder or you're facing mental health challenges, no matter how big or small, all of them can be supported, you know? So it's almost backwards to think that that identity is there to stick with you for life. And that's why we can change part of how we use this language to say rather self-harmers or schizophrenics, people who have self-harmed, or, you know, people who experience schizophrenia, because there can come a time where your experiences of schizophrenia can diminish. There can come a time where you no longer self-harm. And I think it's important to see people that way as beings who are able to grow and evolve and overcome these challenges, rather than people who are, you know, eternally having to struggle with them.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I think you said it perfectly, that when we use those kind of descriptors and those kind of labels, those kind of words, we don't know how a person, for example, that is experiencing a certain issue like that is going to take that in, and how is that going to affect their mental health? Because you're kind of giving them, you're forcing almost ownership of their condition onto them. But what you're saying is start addressing it as you are a self-harmer. You start addressing it as you address the issue, not the person. And I think that's a very crucial distinction to make. Also, what you said was, which I thought was very interesting, that I know I've done this many times, is if someone's struggling with mental health, the question that I'd always say is, what's wrong? And what you said is change that to what has happened. And it's a complete, the person's going to take that in a completely different way, because me saying what's wrong, I'm implying, oh, there's something, you know, wrong with you. And you don't know how that's going to play in the person's head. But in terms of so I looked at the 4 steps and I was trying to, so there was, just for the people who haven't seen the talk, guys, by the way, if you haven't, please go watch it. It's fantastic. Listening, then there's accuracy and stigma, and then it's noticing if someone is in trouble, and then it's keeping support close to us. Now, listening, I could understand, accuracy, I could understand, and keeping support close, understand. But the one I think I would find most challenging, and I think a lot of people find most challenging, is noticing if someone is at risk. So how do we start being, I guess, paying more attention to that? Because you could look, I've seen in my experience, you speak to someone, you know, they seem fine, they might seem a bit, you know, off, but you would never think that, for example, they would be going through depression or going through something that significant that you would have no idea about.
Yeah, it seems tricky, doesn't it, to be able to have this sixth sense about us, to be able to pick up on that. The good news is that that sixth sense doesn't exist, you know, otherwise there would be categories of people who are born to be therapists and categories who are never born to be, but anyone can train as a therapist. And from the point of view of the talk that I was giving, it was about language. And this is why I think as a whole, language around mental health can help center this, you know, public health strategy to take us from mental health awareness to mental health action and learn about it, because we can learn a lot about what someone is feeling or what they're experiencing by the questions that we ask and the language that we use to address that. You mentioned that it's good to ask people what has happened, you know, rather than what's the problem, because already that carries connotations of negativity that you might not want to talk about. And by asking these right questions, that's how I think that, you know, that we can know when we have to reach out to someone to provide support. There's also a lot of non-language based approaches to do the same, you know, like if they have not been on social media for a long time and you might expect them to do so, if they are not coming to the socials which you have at work, for example, for a while, there are indicators, and this will vary for, you know, each of the mental health challenges that you can face. But I think when it does come down to language, the most important thing that we can do to become aware of this is to ask open questions, and open questions that aren't leading in any way. And actually, I think a big part of this is detaching oneself from the ego, not coming in with any preconceived notions of what you think is going on with the person that you're trying to speak to, or ask any questions that you think will give you the right answer to know how you can help. It's about them, you know. I also in the talk talk about active listening, and I think that technique is one of the same with this. Active listening is all about how we can speak in a particular way with the people we're having conversations with to make them feel validated and to make them feel as if they can talk about the topics that they wish. So through a combination of showing that you're there to listening and giving open questions, not being led by our own ego or our own thoughts to try and find something out that we want to know, but just listening to them and from the emotion that they convey, and also the content of what they say, pick up from there what seems to be very important for them, and just talk, because talking is the first step to recovery, and it helps us learn an awful lot about not only our own mental health challenges, but the mental health challenges of others. Yeah,
and I think you made a crucial point about detaching yourself from the ego. It's not about you kind of leading the questions, but like, it's not about you trying to get the answer that you want or that you think is there. It's about really just being fully present and focusing on the person. What is it that they need? What is the questions that is going to maybe give them an insight into what they're going through that maybe they haven't considered before?